Welcome to the British Weightlifting Podcast, the national governing body for weightlifting and para-powerlifting in the UK. Here, we go beyond the platform, exploring the people, ideas and moments shaping our sports. From grassroots clubs to elite training halls, from first competitions to Paralympic podiums, we speak to the lifters, coaches and changemakers who are building strength across the country. If you're part of the lifting community or just curious about what drives it, you're in the right place. At British Weightlifting, we proudly support pride and strive for an inclusive environment where all lifters feel welcome and respected. While our guests may hold a range of views on complex topics, we believe in open, respectful conversation, and we will always champion dignity, fairness and equality in our sports. If you ever need help and support, you can call Switchboard, the LGBTQIA+ helpline, on 0300 33 00 630, or you can contact Mind for mental health support on 0300 123 3393. You can find both of these phone numbers listed in the caption. Let's begin. Get into character. Podcast character. Yeah. So Pride Month is upon us, and at British Weightlifting, we wanted to do a special podcast episode to mark the occasion and to celebrate Pride. We're lucky enough to have Harry Nelms with us today as a special guest who's going to share his insight and experience as a proud LGBTQIA+ member. Harry is an incredible weightlifter, having secured bronze at the 2023 British Championships. His current best lifts are 135 kilos in the snatch and 175 kilos in the clean and jerk. A digital marketer by day, he also coaches athletes to reach their own potential. Harry shares his weightlifting journey on social media, where he also shares his experiences as a proud LGBTQIA+ member involved in sports. Hello, Harry. Welcome to the British Weightlifting Podcast.
Hello, thank you for having me.
No worries. Thank you so much for giving us your time today. So I want us to start all the way back. So my first question for you is, what was life for you like growing up?
So I'm very, very lucky. I had a very nice childhood. I am from South Wales. Some people say they can hear the accent. Other people think that it's pretty neutral. I went to a comprehensive school. There was maybe one out person in that entire school. And I think it was through no fault of their own that they were out. Caerphilly was where I'm from, wasn't what it is now. I think school was strange. I always felt different. I didn't know why I felt different. I hated sport in school. I hated PE with a passion, hated rugby, hated football. I mean, one of the big telltale signs should have been the fact that when I asked if I was a team player, I said I was more of a Beyonce. Yeah, I feel like the call was definitely coming from inside the house on that occasion. It was difficult. I remember feeling different. I didn't know why I felt different. A lot of that created a lot of internalized feelings of, I wouldn't go as far to say it's like, oh, it's the internalized homophobia, but it was definitely toxic in that I didn't know why I felt different, and it made me hate myself. Because I hated myself, other people pick up on that. Like, I was bullied at school. Like, people love dropping the F slur. Not appropriate. It was almost like they could smell it on me, and I didn't know. This is going as far back as even primary school. It's like, oh, gay is a really funny, like, negative thing before you even know how babies are made. It was hard. I'm very grateful I've got wonderful parents who, I don't want to say don't care, just in the sense of they're just like, well, you're you, and that's all that really matters. Very, very clear defining moment in secondary school where someone in my year, who I was quite close to, came out as bi. I was like, okay, this feels quite fitting. I realize I've got like 10 minutes into talking now, and I'm bi, by the way. So he came out as bi, and it was kind of, everyone's like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. And I'm kind of like, what's this? So
Yeah.
doing a bit of looking into it, I'm like, oh, maybe I feel a little bit like this. And then it was like April Fools. And immediately it was, oh, okay, well, we're going to shut that down.
Can you sit back down?
Clear browser history. So that kind of moment there, it was like, oh, that's a joke. That's meant to be funny. Why don't I find that funny?
Yeah.
And then it was like, okay, so that's not safe. Let's shovel these feelings I have down and not address them, or ever open that box ever. And that was what I kind of planned to do. You'll probably notice from talking to me, I'm not the most butch or macho individual going. And I think I was quite ashamed of that growing up, playing into the whole like not liking sports, being quite effeminate. Made me very, very self-conscious about the way I behaved, the way I acted. I mean, I spent a lot of time in training kit per se, like just shorts and t-shirts and stuff like that. Like it was like I wasn't concerned with my appearance. That moment in school and the kind of bullying, feeling like people know this big secret about you before you even know this big secret about you, um, it's hard. And being a kid is hard enough. Then, never mind now. I'm grateful that I had a very strong support network, but that didn't make any of it easy. And I think a lot of people try and struggle internally with it rather than kind of speaking about it, because part of you wants to be like, oh, it matters and I should be able to express this part of myself. And the other part of you is like, well, it doesn't really matter because it's just kind of who you fancy at the end of the day. And that's no one's business, essentially. That's a pretty long-winded answer for what was growing up like. But that it's very individual to people. I know people who've had really traumatic upbringings. Like there's a lot of religious trauma going on there. Fortunately for me, when I went to Sunday school as a kid, I just manipulated the women into giving me more biscuits.
Yeah.
So I didn't have this holier than thou, you're going straight to hell experience. But there are plenty of people I know who did. And I think sometimes that in itself is its own problem. And there are plenty of people who have been like victim of violent crime growing up just because of where they live or how they look, and they're not even LGBTQ. It's very different for everyone. So I want to make it clear that like my experiences are very individual to me and where I grew up. That's not to say that people weren't saying horrific things. I'm very fortunate that I've never been. I say I've never been the target of a hate crime, but I've never experienced a violent hate crime, I should say. Disenfranchisement from my peers definitely manifested in my ability to socialize. I didn't have a lot of male friends. I was talking to my grandmother about this the other day when I saw them, and she was like, "Yeah, you never really had many male friends, did you? You're always friends with the girls." I'm like, yeah, I was, because they didn't ask those questions.
Yeah.
And they didn't care. And one of my best friends from school, Georgia, she's a lesbian, and she always felt like she knew. I think she had a pretty good gaydar. That kind of feeling very disenfranchised from young boys and men probably still plagues me to this day, feeling like I walk into a room trying to talk to someone of the same sex, and it's like, oh, they know.
Yeah.
They can sense it, and they hate me for it, which made me not want to try sports. But it made me really want to fit in. All I ever wanted to do was just fit in. And then you kind of get to a point in your life, you're like, okay, well, I don't, so I might as well stop trying now. And that's very liberating. That feeling of being like, well, actually, I don't care, and I will just march to the beat of my own drum. And that beat is Britney Spears' Womanizer, so there is that too. But yeah, I think I was very grateful when I found weightlifting, just because it was something to focus on, and it wasn't a team sport, so I didn't have to interact with anyone.
Yeah.
And I could just kind of crack on with it, and all of a sudden this really big intimidating world of sport becomes much less intimidating, because I can just crack on with this and I don't have to subject myself to abuse.
Yeah, that was going to be my next question. So you obviously have said you were avoiding sports growing up. It wasn't a space you necessarily felt comfortable. How and why did you decide to get into weightlifting?
So I was going to, do you know the power plates? The like the things that vibrate?
Yes.
Yeah. So I was going to a power plate studio with my mum to get into fitness, right? I loved these things. They were brilliant. And everyone there was like women 35 to about 65, which is like golden cohort. They loved me. I'd been going to this gym with my mum, and I'd been really enjoying it. And then it shut down, and I was devastated. And I was like, well, I guess I am now going to enter a life of,
finished.
yeah, like I'm not going to leave the sofa. I'm not going to leave the house. And a few of the people from the gym were like, we're going to this new place. They do strength and conditioning. Do you want to come with us? And I was like, well, you guys are my safe people. So yeah, I'm there. And I think I was 16 at this point. So we went to this strength and conditioning class, and I was like, oh, I really enjoyed this. This was really fun. And it was less daunting because I was going with people who also didn't know what they were doing. So it wasn't like I'm the newbie in the class and everyone's watching me like pick up a barbell with my spine.
Mhm.
It was okay, cool. We're all prawning. That's fine.
Yeah.
I'm having fun doing it. So I'd kind of been going to these classes for a while, and then they started to do more weightlifting in it. It was like, oh, you do a power clean today, and it's like my arms are like this. I can't get my elbows up, and I just kept going and going and going, and then it was like, okay, I think I'd maybe cleaned 95 kilos at this point, and I was chuffed. I was like, I'm nearly at 100. This is the big leagues.
Yeah.
I started going to the weightlifting class, and I was like, okay, cool. Maybe I don't like box jumps and burpees. Maybe I just like lifting. So I think I was about 17 or 18 at this point. And I just kept going to these weightlifting classes, and I started to really enjoy myself. And I was like, oh, plus everyone you interact with at a weightlifting class also really struggles to interact with people. So it was like no one could tell.
Yeah.
So it just kind of was a snowball effect. I just kept going and going and going. And then you start getting better, and you're like, okay, maybe I'll just keep doing this. And it wasn't until one of the coaches at the gym, Rod, who was my first ever coach, had messaged me after a max out, and he was like, those are some good numbers. Here's your program. And I was like, oh, cool. Well, I didn't know this was going to happen. And then me being me, I just attached my entire personality to that, and did for the last like 7 years.
Would you say that was a point when you got the program that you kind of had that realization of, I want to be really good at this, I want to get to these national competitions?
So I didn't know that national competitions were a thing. I didn't really know that competitions were a thing. And it was like, I remember like if we did like I was working at the gym at this point, and we did like a CPD day, and it was on weightlifting, and he was like, you can do the Welsh Open. I was like, oh, I could cut to 85 kilos for that. Yeah. And he's like, what? It's your first competition. What are you on about? Like, I've always had issues with food and body image and stuff. And he was just like, what on earth are you on about? Just go and lift. So I put it off for a bit, and then he did. He finally made me do my first comp. But I didn't know that the Welsh Championships were a thing. I didn't know the British Championships. I didn't even know what Bucks was.
Yeah.
So at that competition, then I qualified for the Welsh Champs with their junior total scheme. Yeah, and then it was like the British kind of wasn't really on my radar for many, many years. I was just kind of enjoying going to these competitions and putting up bigger numbers. And then like I'd gotten an email one day, and they were like, oh, congrats, you broke the junior clean and jerk record. And I'm like, oh, that's pretty sick. like that's
You
not bad
really
for me.
nonchalanted your way to records.
It's because I'm so over it. But yeah, and I think it wasn't until 2022 I did my first British. I was cacking myself for that. And I remember just like in the back room with my coach, Chris Speed is wrestling some guy next to me. I'm in floods of tears and I can't stop crying, and I don't know why. And it was just like I placed fourth. Chris beat me by a kilo that day. And then it was like, okay, well, if I can do that with being really nonchalant about this and not kind of really caring how well my training goes, I wonder what I could do if I cared about my training and where it goes. Because up until that point, I was a full-time student. I was studying a master's degree in cancer biology, so I was spending upwards of 12 hours a day in the lab. And I did up until the end of 2022. I remember going to the Commonwealth Games and literally begging to have the time off from my disc tutor, being like, can you just look after my cells, please? I need to go.
Yeah.
I think that was kind of the defining moment where I was like, oh, no, I think I want to make these competitions, and I think I want to do them well.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I think I've been to a British ever since, which is quite cool. I bombed last year's though. That was a rough time.
Rite of passage for any weightlifter.
It's a rite of passage.
You have to bomb out once.
Yeah, no, that's true. I managed to stick 3 in a year, so that's fine. I think that was probably the defining point in my journey as a weightlifter, where I was like, okay, I think I could do these competitions. I think I'm handling myself quite well with them and just having fun with it.
You've obviously got to a point now where you're at the national competitions. A lot of people may look up to you as like an athlete.
Oh God.
And you share your weightlifting and your comp experiences on social media, and you are also very vocal on social media about LGBTQIA plus issues. Do you think it's important for athletes to be visible allies in that social space?
Yeah, I think any sort of visibility is incredibly important. We're moving to an era of sport now where people are more inclined to follow an athlete if they have a personality attached to them. Unfortunately, for some athletes who are dead behind the eyes, that doesn't help with brand deals and sponsorships and things like that. People, in terms of weightlifting, I'm a huge fan of the personalities like Olivia Reeves, Matty Rogers. They are they're always really outspoken. They give up how they look in terms of what message they're giving out to people. I've always having more female friends and stuff in school, I've always associated myself more with being one of the girls than I have being a lad. They already have to fight in terms of being in a pretty male, I say male dominated. I think worldwide it's male dominated. In the UK, it's obviously dominated by Emily Campbell. When it comes to being a woman in sport, I think you're up against so much more. And then when being open and out about your sexuality and things in sport, you're up against even more. So there are plenty of people who it's that intersectionality of it all. Which for people who aren't aware of what intersectional feminism is, it's kind of like how as a woman you would experience misogyny, but you would experience it as a white female, whereas someone like Emily Campbell experienced it as a black woman. She experienced it as a black person. Um, so it's kind of acknowledging that there's several different layers that are intertwined. And that doesn't make one worse than the other. It's just acknowledging that there are several layers to it. And I do think that the view of queer people in the UK, I'm speaking as a male here, men will view you as less because they see you as effeminate. There's almost a level of misogyny in that. You are less because you like boys and that's gay. So because of that, you must do all of these things that make you less than me because I'm uber macho and I'm better than you.
Yeah.
I think it's really important in sport to be open about it because that visibility, for any queer kid in school who's really struggling with PE and just getting along with their peers, can be like, that's someone like me and they're doing these really cool things. I want to be like that and they've shown me that I can do that. Or you kind of vocalize these kind of problems that you're facing and you bring light to them and you say this isn't okay, and you can start to gain some momentum behind it, and all of a sudden it goes from being a problem that no one's talking about to a problem everyone's talking about.
Yeah.
And you don't have to put up with it either. I've spoken about this previously. When I was first in the sport, I never thought I could do anything with it. I didn't think I could be good at it because I was previously very uncoordinated. I wasn't good at rugby. I wasn't athletic. And most of all, I had this big, horrible secret that makes you really bad at sport, apparently. Obviously, that's not true. So I was always kind of like, if I ever had the opportunity to be in this space where I'm in the public eye to some extent, I should use my platform to be that person that I wanted to see when I was in the sport that I didn't have. And I think like it's a wonderful time for young women in this sport because you've got really powerful role models currently competing and dominating. And it's great. But there's lack of kind of it feels like the second that someone talks about their queerness and they're an athlete, there's a news story that picks it up, and then it's people arguing in the comments about whether or not trans people deserve rights. And it's overshadowed by this horrible vitriol and, quite frankly, the same narrative that gay men faced in the 80s with the AIDS crisis. To be queer is to be a scapegoat at the minute, quite frankly. And most people probably wouldn't say that they are homophobic, transphobic, or any of that. It just they put it under common sense. And I think now more than ever, it's really important to be open and loud and in people's face about it, because there are people who can't be. And I think that was a big defining point in my own character development, when I just stopped caring about what people thought. Like this 102 kilogram guy's having a meltdown on the platform. Like he's bawling, and then all of a sudden people are like, I just get known for crying at things.
Yeah, I took a
It's
photograph
normal.
of
Cry.
you at the 2022 British Champs when you'd finished the lift and you had your head in your hands.
Yeah, I promise I was having a good time. I promise.
So
Um,
you touched there on you becoming that role model that you wished you had when you were younger. I'm going to talk about a bit of research now. So in 2017, Sport England and Pride Sports commissioned a report to look at LGBT participation in sport and physical activity. And one of the key findings from that report was that bisexual men are less active than both heterosexual and gay men. Why do you think this is the case?
I mean, we couldn't pick a side for one, so it's probably just because we're lazy. No, it's I don't know. I think some of it is probably being bi is underreported. So one of the things that, like, I remember I was in the car with my friend, and she turned to me and she was like, "I think everyone's a little bit bi," and I'm like, "No, they're not. You're bi." So I think some of it could just be an underreporting. I've infiltrated these straight people, and now I don't want them to know. But then I also think some of it could be feeling like you can't fit in, despite making up the majority of the queer community. Bi people often face this really weird thing of like, well, you're not gay enough to enjoy Pride,
Yeah.
but you're definitely not straight enough to not be the subject of homophobic slurs. You're kind of in this weird middle place, and it's like, unless you're attend Pride in a crop top and short shorts, you're not viewed as equal as by your gay counterparts. And similarly, if you're not uber macho and burly, then the straight men won't accept you. And there's plenty of gay sports clubs emerging. There's I think it's the Bristol Bisons are like an all gay rugby team, I think, or a queer rugby team, sorry. And that's great, and that it's essential that we have these spaces for queer sport. I think sometimes some of it, particularly for bi people, is just the idea that if I go to this rugby club where they're all queer, if I meet a love interest who's female, is she gonna think that I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm swinging more towards one way? Schitt's Creek did a really good analogy of this. I don't know if you've seen it on Netflix. It's basically talking about liking the wine and not the label. More often than not, people kind of think of it as this spectrum of like, oh, you either like men more, or you like women more, or you're smack bang in the middle, when it's kind of, you just don't care.
Yeah.
It sounds really bad, but like all of a sudden, what you're attracted to is stripped down essentially to its absolute like fundamentals of, is this person nice? Is this person kind? Is this person someone I could spend the rest of my life with? Without then being like, is this person a man or is this person a woman? And I recognize my privilege in being able to conform to some level of heteronormative life with my girlfriend Georgia. But had I not found Georgia, then I could have ended up with a guy, and then I'm the subject of like the kind of the homophobia that's kind of building in the UK at the minute. So to go back to the original question, I think it's probably this lack of feeling like you fit in anywhere. And I think a lot of people could probably relate to that, regardless of whether or not they're queer or not.
Yeah.
This feeling of, I'm not gay enough to go to the gay stuff, and I'm not straight enough to go to the straight stuff. I just won't do either.
Yeah. I really liked your story earlier about how you got into weightlifting. You kind of found a space you felt safe in and then ended up migrating with them gyms, and then it just kind of happened organically. Another piece of that report that I spoke about earlier, the report also noticed that 38% of bisexual men agree that sport is an inclusive activity. So my question to you now is, do you think that weightlifting is inclusive?
There are definitely areas of weightlifting that are not, as I think with any sport. And I sometimes think it's entirely dependent on who you're with. I've had some lovely training environments of really supportive, lovely people. Shout out to Club 646 in Cardiff. The people that train at that club are lovely. They're always really supportive. They're just a good bunch. That's not to say that I haven't trained with people who I would not associate with. You know, there are several things that had been said, and none of them nice, that people don't always think that it'll get back to you. You know, I think sometimes that's maybe worse than being outrightly homophobic.
Yeah.
Because it lures you into a false sense of security that, oh, these people didn't mind originally, but they do mind.
Mm.
And people are always going to dislike you. And I think that's one thing that is a hard pill to swallow, is someone is always going to dislike you because of your sexuality. There's nothing you can actually do about that. You can scream till you're blue in the face, but you can't argue with stupid. That was one thing that I really struggled with, because I do want to be liked. But you then need to start, like, for me not to like people, I need to accept that they don't have to like me. And that was something that my therapist brought up. She was like, you keep trying to be everyone's cup of tea, but people just sometimes only drink coffee. But they're wrong. Like this big social injustice of they're wrong. But ultimately, there's always going to be someone who doesn't like you because of the way you are. And it's sad. And it's sad that they have that view on life. But in the same way that I don't like homophobes, they might not like me because I'm queer. Yeah, probably. And much less so when I'm outspoken and in their face. I think weightlifting as a whole is inclusive once you look past that lifting shoes are 200 quid a pop and a program is 100 quid a month. And, you know, there's plenty of things that you can do to mediate that. I think in terms of being queer inclusive, there's always so much more that we can do.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes the inclination is to sit back and go, well, I'm inclusive, so this sport is inclusive. And we run the risk then of just not caring or adapting. At the minute, trans folk are on the tip of everyone's tongue, whether you're trying to outright battle the transphobia that's spilling out of people's mouths, or you're part of the anti-woke brigade. It's really hard. And I think weightlifting is already it focuses on being either a man or a woman. Whilst that's because of physiological differences, we know that there are more than just two genders. When people are like, oh, well, it's basic biology. Well, it's not basic biology. I've got a master's degree and I can tell you that. For example, the number of intersex people is more than that of gingers. So when you say, oh, we don't need to include those, well, do we just stop including gingers? It doesn't make sense. And I think every single royal college is on the same page with it, but the UK government isn't. And for weightlifting to be inclusive, I don't know what that looks like. And that doesn't mean that we shouldn't try to make it inclusive. British weightlifting just held the Adaptive Open, which is really inclusive and made weightlifting an accessible sport for people who otherwise it wouldn't be. And that's a really good thing. The same principle applies to the trans community and the queer community and people who are gender non-conforming. It's how do we create something like that honors them, but also honors the rules of sport that we have set? I don't know what the right answer is. And plenty of people who would think that I'm in the wrong for not just saying you should just compete in the gender that you want to compete in. I don't know what that looks like. Currently, I know that the rules are you have to have medically transitioned for a certain period of time. As long as you're competing within the realms of the legislation of sport, I don't think that should be an issue. I think people are far too quick to be like, trans women don't belong in female-only sports because they're men. And it's like, well, they're not. And if they're competing in it, they've passed all the drugs testing. Also, weightlifting, drugs, like, get a grip. Like, I think we need to clean the sport up before we start throwing the fingers at trans people. Plenty of your favorite lifters are beamed off their nut on gear. And I think people forget that. And they get all worked up over this idea that trans women are trying to steal away women's sports. They're not. A population of people who have the highest suicide rate, they have the highest percentage of mental illness, and they are constantly berated on the news I think if these people want to do some sport, I think that's okay. I know there is a trans athlete from New Zealand, Laurel Hubbard, but in weightlifting, I can't think of anyone else. And it's, how big of a problem is that actually? I think what a certain group of people have done really well is getting people very, very scared of. I went for a haircut, right, when I was living in Gloucestershire, and this woman has stood there and she's talking to me about trans women in sport. This woman doesn't even go to the gym, and she's giving it this big like, oh, it's stealing medals away from women. There's even a website that lists every single medal that's been stolen from a woman by a trans woman. And what this website does is if this trans individual comes first, it counts that as 3 medals being stolen, because second should have come first, third should have come second, and fourth should have come third. They love to quote this website as some sort of Bible of data. But when you actually, like, when you use your critical thinking skills, which is lacking, and I blame ChatGPT for this, all of a sudden you're like, right, okay, well, the number of medals that you keep reporting are being stolen are from frisbee golf, which last time I checked, I don't think there's any advantage there. I don't think people are taking Anavar to do frisbee golf. And just the way that they report the data, is wrong. And if you don't have a background where you can look at data and understand what it's saying, you are vulnerable to being missold this idea that trans people are the enemy. And it's the very same narrative of what we have with people who are being called illegals. No one's illegal, like by law. Like the only people who are technically illegal are overstaying like a working visa. If you come to this country seeking asylum, you're doing it legally. It's a really scary narrative at the minute. I do fear for trans people. I fear for the gay community. It's really scary. And I think with hate crimes on the rise, I think it's something like it's reported that trans people, there's been an 11% increase in hate crimes. It's important to be visible in your sexuality if you are safe to do so. But I also think it's really important to be an ally at this point in time. Allyship can look like anything from calling your mate out when he says something inappropriate, or correcting them, or it's being a friend, and it's being like, I'm not going to stand there and let you take that, and doing your due diligence of just being a friend to the community, pointing people in the right direction for resources. If someone's being bullied at work because of their sexuality, it's being like, well, you can talk to these helplines, which are obviously, you've got the big ones like Samaritans and all that, but there are queer specific ones. I think Umbrella Cymru, which is a Welsh one, which will be no use to anyone in England, but but yeah, like there are resources available. And I think it's important as an ally to educate yourself on what's going on and be willing to listen, be willing to support any of your queer friends, because I'm sure they're also equally terrified as to what's going on in the UK at the minute, because the narrative is scary. You look at how women are being treated as well. Like it's this traditionalist view on society where no one wins in the end.
So I guess that brings me to my last question, which is, do you have any advice for young LGBTQIA plus aspiring athletes? Or maybe we don't even aspire to that. Just young LGBTQIA plus people.
My message for it would be take up space. Be loud about it if you can. Don't let people dictate how you should be. As queer folk, you are at a higher risk of things like abusive relationships. You're at a higher risk of discrimination. Your safety should always be paramount, but if you can take up space and you can do it loud, I think you should do that. Specifically for the sport aspect of things, I think what you think everyone is thinking, they're not thinking. That's pretty solid advice for anyone who kind of struggles with any sort of confidence when entering a room. But people couldn't care less. You can find some really good people in your life who love and accept you for you. They don't have to understand you. So with my girlfriend Georgia, I can't understand why she only likes men. Like I don't understand it. Well, obviously I do understand it, but I mean in the sense of like only liking one of the, like, a certain presenting, not one, sorry. We have open conversations where we talk about it, where I'm just like, what do you mean you meet someone and like, oh, but I don't like you because you're a girl? And she can't quite grasp why it's like everyone's at risk. Although I do quite like to put it as being a bisexual is the unfortunate. It's very unfortunate to be attracted to men, but I'm very fortunate to be attracted to women. So, so I don't have to date men. Basically, because they're trash. Being young and queer is really hard. There are going to be plenty of people who don't understand you, plenty of people who just don't get it and why it matters. And you might be able to change their mind, you might not. I think 9 times out of 10, people really worry about telling their parents. I think parents sometimes have this view of grandkids and whatnot, and then all of a sudden you can't live up to that, and it's worrying and it's scary. But if parents love you, it's never an issue. I remember talking to my mum about it, and she was just like, well, you're just you. In terms of your sexuality and whatnot, it doesn't matter as long as you're happy. And I think people often put other people's happiness ahead of their own when it comes to these things. Living a lie will do far more damage to your mental health than anything else. It's also never too late. There are plenty of people who are like, oh, well, it's too late now. I'm in my 50s. There are people who are transitioning at 60. It's never too late. And you still have an opportunity to live X amount of years being who you are and happy. Your happiness is paramount. There's periods in my life where I'd put someone else's happiness ahead of my own. They didn't get it. They didn't understand it. And it was really abusive and really toxic. And even to the point of like, you need to go sleep with a male worker to get the gay out your system. And that's not normal behavior. You think it is, because it's like, oh, it's my first long-term relationship. I'll do anything for this person. Won't do that. So I was very lucky that I kind of defined the relationships in my life viewing what my parents have, and wanting that for myself. That doesn't mean to say that was always going to be man and woman. Find someone who understands you and wants to understand you. There's a big difference between understanding you because they have to and understanding you because they want to. And not shying away from difficult conversations. There's plenty of times where someone has said something in the gym and it's gone, that was homophobic. But you go, they probably didn't mean that, and give them the benefit of the doubt. No, turn around, tell them why they're wrong, which is a lot coming from me, given that I'm terrified of confrontation. But yeah, for any young queer folk who are watching this, who don't know what to do, who are scared of coming out, find a supportive person to talk to. There are plenty of helplines that you can message and talk to these people. And sometimes the hardest thing is even just saying it. I remember the first time I was like, I'm a bisexual. It was like, oh, that felt really weird, like quite cringy. You've spoken it. It goes from being this big scary secret to, oh, it's fine and it's normal and it's okay and I'm okay about it.
Yeah.
And also you will just be okay, because at the end of the day, if your family, if your loved ones don't accept you for who you are, there are plenty of other people who will, and plenty of other people who are probably far more palatable than they are. And sometimes chosen family is just as important. I've got some wonderful friends, Leah and Emily. They don't care, but they're also, they do really care and would fight tooth and nail to anyone who would say any sort of. If you can surround yourself with a really positive support network, you can do anything.
Yeah.
That was like a proper pageant answer, wasn't it?
Well, peace. Okay, well, that was the end of my questions. So I guess the only thing to say now is thank you so much for your time. Get you hopping on here and sharing your experiences within the sport and life.
Thank you. I've lived many lives.
You'll be doing things.
Yeah, I do be doing things.
Thanks for listening to the British Weightlifting Podcast. If anything in today's episode raised questions or feelings for you, support is available. Just check the caption for helpful links and helpline numbers. If you've enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe and share on with a friend. We'll be back soon with more stories from the world of weightlifting and parapowerlifting.